While you might know all the key ins and outs of using a Siser cutter, how to complete a print and cut job with it might still not be too clear. In this video, we'll be covering how the print and cut process works as a whole with these machines, with a few refreshers and tips along the way to help make your experience easier. We'll be demonstrating how all this works with Siser EasyColor DTV on a Siser Juliet cutter, though much of the same steps will apply to other printable materials like EasySubli HTV and many inkjet transfer papers, in addition to Siser's Romeo cutter. However, each material will need to rely on its own cut settings for the best results. Before getting started, you'll want to double check that your blade holder has been set up accordingly for your print. While most materials like EasyColor DTV will cut fine with the 45-degree blade adjusted to copy paper depth, some thicker materials may work best with the 60-degree blade adjusted to credit card depth. Assuming your blade is ready, go ahead and launch Siser's Leonardo Design Studio on your computer. A brief refresher on importable files. PNG, TIFF, and JPEG images are supported alongside SVG vector graphics. When importing one of these image files, the Create Cut Contours window will appear and allow you to adjust the tolerance of its trace mask. When clicking Next, the image will be traced. Then you can adjust its smoothing level to clean up the traced outlines. For adding or removing smaller details, you can adjust the minimum contour area to your preference. Finally, you can raise the contour offset if you intend on cutting your print with white borders. When importing an SVG file to Leonardo, you'll be prompted to choose a few options, including two specifically for print and cut jobs. Editable artwork will simply bring the original graphic over to allow for editing in Leonardo itself, which you can then group and run the Build Contours tool with once ready. The print and cut option essentially takes you through the same tracing process as before, treating your vector graphic as a max quality image file. Speaking of which, both vector files and high-resolution images of at least 300 dpi will be the easiest to trace. Image files also work best with a transparent or white background. With your image or graphic now imported and contoured, let's go to the Artboard Cutting Mat column to the right. By default, your contoured image will have 4 scan marks surrounding it on each diagonal corner. If you'd like to override them, you can check the page mark setting to use scan marks adjusted to the paper size selected below. Paper sizes currently supported by Leonardo are US letter, US legal, A4, and A3. Enabling page marks will not only make scaling your image easier, but it also allows you to bring smaller duplicates of it or other contoured images into one page. The standard Siser mat, which is included with all Juliet cutters, will be more than enough for most printable transfers like EasyColor DTV, though other options for a large Siser mat and generic mats are ready to use down the line. To select which printer to use ahead of time, click the printer button next to the paper size drop-down list to then select it on your computer. If you'd like a preview of how your print will look, you can check Don't Show Page Grid to hide the cutting area's square grid. However, this grid won't be a part of the final print regardless. Lastly, if you intend on printing a single contoured image without enabling page marks, be sure to scale your image to where its scan marks are within the dashed gray print borders. With your image ready to print and cut, be sure to deselect any items in the artboard and click Send Design. Leonardo will essentially take you through a step-by-step process in printing your contoured image, which will then be ready to cut through your machine. Going to the right side, you can choose what printer to use once more under Select Printer. Then under Printer Paper Size, clicking Set Print Size will allow you to select the specific size of your loaded paper, though keep in mind that Leonardo is currently optimized for US letter and legal, A4, and A3 sizes. If your contoured image is at the right size but is grayed out from being off-center, you can click Recenter to reset it to the center of the page. Any recentering of additional layers must be done back in the Design tab itself. With most print and cut jobs requiring cutting mats for holding your print while cutting, be sure to leave the cutting properties as is, with the appropriate cutting mat selected. Lastly, you can disable the mirror option for the majority of print and cut jobs, including EasyColor DTV, EasySubli, and dark transfer paper prints. Though some select materials, like light transfer papers, will require mirror to be enabled. With your settings in, click Send to Printer and double check that the proper printer is selected before continuing. This is also a good time to configure your printer's own settings to its best print quality, or to use its transfer paper presets if available. Assuming your printer is all set, you may go ahead and click Print. Once the print itself is done, position and place it to the top left of your cutting mat. Now you may load your print with mat to your cutter, lining it up to the bottom door's left and bottom edges. Make sure your pinch rollers are in position to hold the cutting mat. Then you may lock them in place. Use the front touch panel to move the blade to the bottom left bracket, marked by an arrow right below. Then set your cut settings to use the Easy Weed preset, which is capable of cutting EasyColor DTV prints as is. To make sure this works, however, you can always run a test cut before continuing. If successful, simply move your blade back in position. We must stress that cut settings will vary depending on what printed material you're using. If your material is on the thicker or thinner end, for instance, you can further adjust your cutter's force and speed settings and continue running test cuts until it weeds out cleanly or stops piercing through its back sheet. These settings can always be saved over the open slots on the other tab of your machine's cut presets. Going back to Leonardo, select the Cutting Contours item to the left, then double check that your loaded cutting mat and blade is selected. And leave Use Cutter Settings checked. If desired, you can override your cutter's force and speed settings to adjust them through Leonardo during your test cut process. With all of this ready to go, simply click Send to Cutter to cut your contoured image. Note that for Juliet machines, their front panel will display photo previews of the registration camera scanning each print mark. Once your print has been cut, you may unload it for weeding to check your results. In our case, this EasyColor DTV print is ready to be masked out and applied onto an item. If you're having any troubles during the cutting or registration process, however, you may continue to adjust your cutter settings accordingly. For any questions or MyExpert support for your Siser cutter, be sure to visit us at support.heatpressnation.com.